Hey everybody, welcome to the next episode of Future Fuzz, the B2B marketing podcast. Today I'm joined by Neil Davidson, the CEO of creative agency Heyhuman, a London-based agency taking creativity and smart thinking to the next level. Heyhuman was awarded the Sunday Times Best Places to Work in 2024. This award is a testament to the agency's people-first philosophy, where every idea is valued, every voice is heard, and creativity is at the heart of everything. Neil has previously led and repositioned advertising agencies in the UK and Europe. He has an MBA and MA in creative writing and is currently completing a doctorate research into Gen AI and creativity in agencies. Neil, calling in from London today, thank you very much for joining the show.
Hello, Justin. Thanks for the invite.
It's great to have you here. So there's a little bit of panic, we might say, in the market with, let's say, people questioning the future of creativity within agencies. Where are creative agencies heading with effectively the impact of generative AI in all facets of marketing? What's your take, Neil?
Yeah, so I'm a Scot, so stoicism comes easily to me. So I'm not really I like to think I'm not a panicker anyway. But I kind of go what creativity and on which creative agencies. I think there's definitely challenges. I definitely think there's going to be lots of changes, but if I kind of make it personal, if I talk to 50 creatives, which I am in the middle of as part of my research, I'll get 50 nuanced answers. But also I'll get a lot of people who are very clear what's going to happen. I don't think anybody's clear what's going to happen because they go, creativity's like incredibly opaque. If you really want to annoy somebody, ask them to define creativity and just step away. But also, AI is very opaque and moving. So you've kind of got two kind of and creativity's changed so much in the last sort of 10 years even. So you've got two moving targets. I mean, if I had to have a punt, my gut feel is I think you'll have very big creative agencies making the most of scale, and they may or may not be creating more generic content like social, etc., on the more consultancy offer for ideation, big concepts. And then you're going to have very small agencies. And when I say small agencies, they might be one person, the creative curator who's able, because of AI, to do the research, to do the ideation, and to do a hell of a lot of the execution. So nobody likes change, do they?
Yeah, and when you say like big agencies left over, what sort of size do you think that they'll be, the big boys?
Yeah, well, I think I think it's highly likely that the big boys will become smaller. I've heard people say, 1 in 10% of the creatives that there are now in 5 years' time. So I'm not hiring juniors, having these kind of very senior creative curators, and then merging with another one of the big boys. I could be totally wrong, but there is a thread of logic there in terms of, a business with technological change, as in an industry with technological change, lowering margins, a talent crisis, on technology that can, in certain areas, debate, but I believe replace that talent.
There's something to be said for something you said a moment ago there, which was, let's say, the smaller piece work, the repetitive work, for example, things like social media posting.
Yeah.
I feel as though that's just totally going to be automated.
Toast.
It's toast.
Yeah. Unless, I only get like every answer's got a caveat, but unless you're a brand who, you're in a sector like luxury,
Yeah.
or part of your brand DNA is authenticity,
Yeah.
I think, there'll be quirks. Of course, there are going to be quirks, and there might be a lot of quirks. But unless you've got something particular to your sector or your brand, I do think, that I think on the flip side, people are saying, that there'll be a rise of human only curated content, and, people will start to value it more. I kind of go, okay, look at cinemas, if you took that argument, lots of people should be going to see original prints of original movies,
Right.
the classics, etc. And some people do, but I can think of one cinema in the whole of London that does that. It'll happen, but I don't. Sadly, and I'm one of those sadders that's going to that one cinema. So it's not that what I mean. So it's not that I'm kind of like one of these AI evangelists. I think sadly, we're all time poor. We don't have as much bandwidth to critique content as we in the agency world like to think people do.
Yeah.
So, that's why I think a lot of content can be more generic, more automated, right or wrong.
I feel like at the same time that there'll be too much content. There already is, in a way, a huge amount that we're faced with every day. And then I'm start to ask the question, are there more movies produced now than ever before? If we just dive into the movie example there, do you think that there are more produced than ever before? I don't think it's slowed down.
Yeah, the short answer is, I don't know. But I know that, okay, dodging that bullet because I don't have the data, but I do know that there's a hell of a lot of screenwriters, editors, people associated with the industry looking for work at the moment. I know that anecdotally, and I know that through, data that I read. So there's definitely something going on. So yeah, I mean, but also even if there are more movies being made, there's not more great movies being made. It's a bit like the old, where have all the great old ads gone? Is that true?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Where have they gone? Yeah. Do you remember that lager from Australia? I think it was called like XXXX Castlemaine.
Yeah.
Lager. Mm-hmm. They did, like, for me, I was at that age where I was very impressionable. I mean, I was not a beer drinking age, but they did a series of advertisements during some sort of football match or movie or something going on ITV. Mm-hmm. And they produced something like 12 different ads, and they all merged together, told a stupid story. They were the most ridiculous ads ever.
Yeah.
They were ads, right?
Yeah.
And like the old Guinness ads.
Yeah.
Like the Guinness surfing ad, which is just like, that's amazing. Where are they? I mean, I'm certainly not seeing them.
Yeah. And like, I think a lot of that effort's being put into ubiquitous content. It is hard to make great ads now. I worked with some brilliant people like, geniuses of the world.
Yeah.
And I don't know, have things been flattened a bit, as in, become more generic? Are there less characters in commercial creative industries? Possibly. My experience is yes. I mean, I worked with a guy called Terence Donovan. I don't know if he was like a famous photographer in the 1960s. He was like the Rankin of his time.
Right.
And when he made ads, he would just, he did everything the way he wanted. He was still making them on film when digital editing and avid editing and all that kind of stuff was around. And he would just tell clients to sign a check. And I mean, he put it more brusquely than I am. Sign a check and be quiet for 6 weeks. And I do think there's a bit of that needed, and maybe people are scared to behave like that. There's pros and cons.
What are clients asking you for at the moment?
I mean, on the flip side, I'd go, clients are still searching for work that transforms their brand. But, and I don't think that's changed. I've had great clients. I've had not so great clients. That's, I think, as a constant. Doing my doctorate stuff, I think one of the interesting things is there's lots of research that says creatives and creative agencies think clients don't care or understand about creativity, and they're not willing to take risks. Now, that's a kind of a bit of a theme that we'll all have heard, but also it's kind of academically backed up. And whether that's true, there's an issue there, because I do think it is. You've got organizations that are big organizations that are run on not taking risks, but for one part of people's jobs, they're being encouraged to take risks. And that's difficult. And lots of like Guinness ads and other ads that are now famous failed in research, but a client was brave enough to say, right, I don't care about research. It can only take you so far. So I guess it's the bravery thing that's going to bring back more ads like that.
Yeah. As the old saying goes, in order to make an omelette, you've got to break a few eggshells, right? You've got to step outside of a comfort zone. Yeah.
Yeah. And I've had some great disasters along the way as well, whilst also making some great ads,
What's a great disaster? Like you think it's absolutely brilliant and then it doesn't really do anything?
That, and also we did, I'll try and maybe not name names, but we did a shoot once in Miami and Antigua for the government, and we cast a very well-known female actress, Hollywood actress's sibling in an ad that was focused around drug prevention. And then we found out whilst on the shoot that he'd done about 15 years for drug trafficking. And so back in the day, whilst we were out in Antigua, we managed to get on the news of the world. And had to march this guy off who said, I thought I was being typecast. So, yeah.
But no, there's no such thing as bad publicity. So did it have any positive impact, do you think?
Well, did it have any positive impact? It didn't have any negative impact on my career. It was a great ad in the end. It was actually, bizarrely, longer story short, a recruitment ad for the Royal Navy and what they do in terms of drug prevention around that area, because they've got frigates and all sorts, stopping drug trafficking. So it probably worked. But back in those days, it was definitely, I had a client there and he's retired, so I can say it. We went way over budget and he just said, I'll just cancel a missile or a frigate and we'll find the budget.
Yeah. Got us about that. We'll cancel a missile or a frigate and we'll make some budget available for this.
Yeah. But there is rather than that just being, there is a point that, as humans, if somebody behaves like that around you, it puffs up people and makes them want to make the best ad for them.
Brilliant.
About trust.
Future Fuzz is sponsored by SalesSource, B2B pipeline management and sales growth for your business.
Neil, you've got a background you've led agencies, you've launched agencies. I think you've also repositioned as well.
Yeah.
What's been one of your favorite stories of repositioning? Because it's not an easy thing to do.
Yeah, I would pluck for Heyhuman because that was quite a complicated story. So I was working at an agency group and I was hired because they'd been bought by private equity. It really it didn't work out. I mean, that private equity company had done very well in other sectors. I think the people challenges of agencies kind of threw them a bit because they're very idiosyncratic. Didn't work out, so they wanted to sell off the group, and me and two others ended up buying part of the agency from them for a crazy amount of money that I still reflect on. Think what it might have been and then multiply it by 10. And I only make that point just because when you've got that hanging over you, it's like gulp. So, and the only reason we did it is because there was a chance to start a business with cash flow.
Right.
But we didn't, the clients weren't right for us. We didn't want the name. We didn't want the positioning. All of the people belonged to an old agency that did different specialisms to what we wanted to do. We were in the wrong part of London, in the wrong building. So kind of like, when like kids buy a car because they've got no money and they spend more on redoing, like a Ford Cortina for 50 quid.
more doing up the car than actually doing house work.
You could argue it was a bit like that, but you know, we really went for it. And I'll be honest, the reason I'd say I'm more proud of that than any other is it was 5 years of hard grind. You know, with not only to make things work, engage people, hire people, launch a brand new brand, whilst having zero pipeline, because we changed. You know, there was no reason for MD to pick up the phone for us, because we didn't do the specialism that the previous agency would know. The people that they known had gone. We had no work from us as a group, so it was a tough 5 years.
Yeah,
and actually we did still, despite that, go for what we believed in terms of tapping into behavioral sciences and learning from that, and actually putting money behind it. So yeah, that one where you learn what a grind successful change is.
but it's more satisfying when you come through the other end, right?
Yes, definitely. And you look back and go, did I actually do that? I guess it's kind of like your first time down a black ski run, like slow, and you look up and go, if I'd seen it from this angle, with the benefit of hindsight, I wouldn't have done it. But you know, it was a great experience.
Glad you did it. Yeah. I speak to a lot of agency owners. I speak to a lot of people from the agency world, and I think there's a tendency for management and leaders in any position, no matter what size the business is, to actually take a moment and stop and look at all that's been done, all that's been achieved, all the great work, all the projects that didn't work out so well, all the, you know, months where you're feasting and you got loads of things going on, and then looking back at the months where it was a bit sticky, and just taking a moment to enjoy it, right? And to appreciate all the people you work with. I definitely think that's quite, people don't do it enough.
Yeah, I was just going to say, yeah, word to self, you do it more often. No, 100%, because you know, you see them on LinkedIn every day. What I thought I was getting into business for, what I actually got, and I do think, you know, as in, I was doing it for quality of life, flexibility, independence. And I do go, remember those things. And if you've lost, you know, say there's 3 things. As long as you've got 2, that's okay. But if you've only got 1, you maybe need to have a word with yourself and change things one way or the other.
Yeah, indeed. One of the reasons I got into, let's say, the world of, I fell into being an entrepreneur and fell into the world of agency work and fell into the marketing world, is that my boss told me that I was unemployable. One of my first bosses. At the time, I was very upset. I'm sure I said this on the show before, but at the time, I was mortified. I was like, oh, you know, I'm going to be applying for jobs at like Boots and head office and big brands and whatever. And you know, looking back, it was actually pretty good advice, because he was right and he meant well, but you know, it was a shock.
And did he mean? And do you think that was fair?
Yeah.
At the time.
Looking back, yeah, I think it was pretty fair. Yeah, and in a funny way, it was a compliment.
Yeah,
but it was also said out of annoyance, because he didn't know what to do with me.
Yeah, but I think also at that stage, I don't think we as people are mature enough yet to go, what's motivating him to say that and what's behind it. You just take it at face value, which is a slap in the face.
Yeah, indeed. It took me about 10 years to work out what he meant.
And I hope you went back to him and, you know, had a war.
Yeah, definitely. The one thing that's been a golden thread throughout your work at Heyhuman and you know, your building of the agency is behavioral science. Where do you integrate the information about consumer behavior in your pitches? You're going to pitch to a new organization, or you want to bring forward a new idea? Where does the behavioral science part of it fit in?
Yeah, really good question, and one that we've grappled with for a while, because at the start, I think there's a danger sometimes, like, you'll know, Justin, when you launch business, you kind of like, you don't wear what you are pitching lightly. It's you. I mean, there's lots of really good research about how entrepreneurs struggle with feedback, particularly if it doesn't fit with their own self-image. So the feedback might be right, I don't know, unemployable or something. But the feedback might be right, but if it felt to question what your business means to you and how your self-image works, people really struggle with it. And I think we went through a bit of that. Like I would actually say, in a good way, we drank our own Kool-Aid a little bit at the start, right? Because we embraced behavioral economics, we embraced neuroscience, and we embraced the notion of human brand relationships. And we did a lot on that, on all three. And it's then really hard not to kind of bring it into everything you do, to your point about a pitch or working together. I mean, 12 years later, 14 years later, whatever, we've kind of, it is integrated and it's more natural. So it's a bit of a mindset piece and it's a bit of a knowledge piece. So out of those three things, there's one thing that we use a lot on behavioral science, behavioral economics, which is what we call 3 questions. And it's, some things that are deceptively simple are deceptively powerful. And it's a 90-minute session with clients and creatives and all the team where we go, right, you've got a brief, but actually reframe it. What's the behavior we're trying to change? Because people quite often have a brief to go, we want to raise awareness. Well, if you want to raise awareness, just how high do you want the volume to go? How much money do you want to spend? Do you know what I mean? It's like, but actually, if you think about what's the behavior we're trying to change, you're kind of thinking differently. And then the second question is, what's stopping people from doing that behavior at the minute? And then the third is, what comparisons have they already got in their head that we could shortcut them to help them see why this behavior is right for them? It's quite hard because I'm doing it in abstract, but like I say, it's 90 minutes. It makes people look at a problem differently. And then, so, I would say we come up with behavioral solutions, but I definitely wouldn't say that means we're nudging, because I did a lot of work in that space in my MBA. So we're not nudging or anything like that. We are just looking at it through a behavioral lens. And then the other piece, neuroscience, we spent a lot of time and money on doing EEG research. So you put headphones and a head cap on people and you really understand what's going on when they're watching ads, etc. And we did that for a long time. Then along came the pandemic and it was impossible to recruit people. Right. So we don't use that as much as we might use other techniques that you can do online. But it's more about, it gave us an understanding of how advertising does and doesn't work and what things do. And then the brand relationships bit, it's more of an anecdotal piece now. I think it's fascinating that we could get people to talk about brands relationships like they would about friends and family. But it's quite hard to turn into a framework or a tool for clients. So even though it kind of annoys me, we kind of had to just that's an interesting thing that helps us from time to time. So really the neuroscience understanding and how we develop creative work and the behavioral economics piece. So the pre-work to get to strategies and creative briefs, and then how we think about creativity and how we judge creative as well. We call it unusual every day. So all the NS testing we did showed that the best comms balance the unusual that makes your brain say, hello, pay attention.
Yeah.
But and that's a classic agency industry model. But when it goes wrong is when there's not enough there to say to your brain, right, here's some more generic cues from the category and from your life so that you can process that. Because if something is just weird, you might pay attention, but you might never process it into your long-term memory.
Let's draw down on that. So you said key catchphrases unusual every day, but if you can just go through again those 3 main questions that you ask in that 90-minute session.
Yeah. So what's the behavior we're trying to change? What's the barrier to that behavior for people? And what comparisons are they making that are relevant to that behavior? at the moment. There was the famous one about pensions, about how flipping pensions to, the fact that, back in the day, we would look at the bank account and look at interest on your bank account confidential. Why we hate pensions is because it reduces what we see in our payslip back in the day. Yeah, again.
Irritation.
Yeah, well, yeah, you're losing, and immediately. Yeah. But they therefore came up with a pension that was called the Pay More Tomorrow scheme. So you sign up, and your pension contributions only go up when your salary goes up, but it only takes a portion of that rise. So pensions never decrease your salary, and it's automated. I mean, that's the other thing. We all do things.
That's the behaviour that tried to change, and the perception that tried to change.
Yeah, and it's not always about, and also I think it's been honest enough about the solution isn't always ads.
What do you mean by that?
Well, sometimes somebody might come to you with a problem, and the best solution might not be advertising. I always use this example, and I have, but not on a podcast. So, client might say, "I've got a shower gel. It's a premium shower gel. It's expensive, so people tend to put it in their cupboard and use it on special occasions or at the weekends or whatever. Want you to do an ad to make it more every day." If you were doing your job, you'd say, "Well, why don't you redesign the packaging to put a hook on it? Because I'll take it in the bathroom. There's a hook on it. I'm more than likely
to hang it up and use it every day."
Yeah, rather than spending tens of millions forever reminding people, treat yourself every day.
Treat yourself every day and chuck money down a black hole. That's what. Yeah, brilliant, Neil. So we're coming towards the end of the show. We covered some amazing topics there, and definitely a brilliant anecdote that we're going to have to write up about the work with the Royal Navy, and then just saying, "No, we'll cancel a couple of missile purchases so we could free up more budget for this advertising campaign." Absolutely cracking stuff. And then those three key questions to ask, especially around what behavior are we looking to change? I think there's some golden nuggets of wisdom there. So, Neil, thank you very much for joining us on the podcast today.
Pleasure. Thank you, Justin. Thanks for the invite.
Thanks for tuning in and making the choice to listen to this podcast. If you liked what you've heard today, please don't forget to subscribe.